It's the Brad and John Show.
It's the Brad and John Show, and it is the Brad and John Show. This is the C Block for June 5th, 2025. Right, John? We just moved
And this is sponsored by Microsoft Teams, right?
Yes, by Microsoft Teams.
Hey, I love the fact, Brad, the delicious irony of I gave you such a hard time the first week in the transition of moving over to Teams, and then I'm the one whose settings change, and my mic drops out. So I think that's Bill Gates punishing me.
John, things worked great when it was Skype. And be honest with me, since we've moved over to Teams, not that we wanted to, but we were forced to, it has not been a smooth transition, has it been?
There were a few kinks, yeah, and
Right.
one of them today, and that's on me.
Right. Okay. Another story to talk about. Did you see this story about they're going to start charging, or they're already doing investigations, and they've already laid charge or pressed charges against one of the county guys up in Lincoln County with the Betsy Faria trial? Have you seen this interesting story?
No, I saw headlines about this, but I haven't read it. Tell us about it, Brad.
Well, brief recap. Betsy Faria was the lady. I think this goes back to, isn't it like 13 years ago, 2012? Wasn't it a long time ago?
It's a long time ago, yeah.
Okay. She was murdered in her house. And they pinned it on her husband, even though her husband had, what was he had a receipt at a roast beef place? Wasn't it like a Rack's roast beef or something like that?
Yeah, it was something like that.
He had a receipt, a date and timestamp receipt, and I think there was even security camera video of him eating at this restaurant, but yet they said, no, he wasn't there. He was at home murdering his wife, stabbing her to death. Okay, so the woman, and it's never really been proven because of the fact, but everybody now thinks, oh, it was Pam Hupp. She did it. He got thrown in jail. It was sort of a kangaroo kind of court kind of thing. And he literally, I think he served 3 years in jail, didn't he? He was like a convicted murderer for like 3 years.
It was something like that, yeah.
So if you've watched the Dateline, and you and I talked about this a couple weeks back, because there's now a audio podcast done by Keith Morrison, who had that beautiful voice, and he talks like this. And I've listened to the podcast, and it is very well done. He talks, if you listen to the promo for the podcast, he comes right out and says, I'm not going to do my Keith Morrison voice because it gets old. He's been doing this for 25 years. They do all these Dateline, murder mystery kind of things. This was the most unusual, bizarre one they ever did, because it turned out that poor Russ Faria got convicted of a murder he didn't do. Then his attorney, who was somewhat of a junkyard dog kind of attorney, just kept going after this and finally got a retrial. In the retrial, he was exonerated, but yet they didn't press any charges against Pamela Hupp. And then Pamela Hupp picks up this poor guy, Mr. Gumpenberger, and takes him to her house and makes it look like he's trying to attack her. And she calls 911, and on the phone, she murders him while she's on the phone with the 911 dispatcher from O'Fallon, Missouri. Did I get that pretty much correct, John?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And the main gist of it, I just looked up the headline, is that one of the investigators admits to lying in the case.
Yes, and the bizarre part of this, we talked about this. If you've watched the original Dateline thing, there's a couple segments where they have interview room footage of Pamela Hupp. They're prepping her for essentially for testifying in court. And the interesting thing was the judge would not allow her to be called as a witness because the defense attorney was trying to get her on the stand, and the judge would not allow it. But they were prepping her. And remember, we talked about this 2 or 3 weeks ago. If you watch the video, the investigator, this might have been the same guy. Okay, now, Pam, now, when they ask you this, you're going to say this happened. And when you ask you this, you're going to say this happened. So it's like
coaching the witness, right?
Coaching the witness, more like writing a book for the witness. You know
writing
what I mean?
the script, yeah, putting words in their mouth.
Scripting the witness. And then, here's an interesting thing. It talks about in this article that he claimed in one of these sessions, I don't know if it was Pamela Hupp or whatever, that they were videotaping it, but he said the videotape recorder malfunctioned. Does that remind you?
That sounds very Nixonian. That sounds like the Richard Nixon White House.
Oh, no. There's a parallel here to St. Louis. Don't you remember this?
Oh, the Eric Reitens and the who was the incompetent black guy liar.
Right. The FBI agent, and that was our friend Kim Gardner, who when Eric Reitens' defense attorney say, "Hey, we want to see this videotape of this deposition." Oh, the machine didn't work, and then magically the machine did work, and they later came out with the tape. See, I say all along, there should be like a dozen people in this case who should be held responsible for this. The judge, the prosecutors, the investigators, and to the point where if you watch and did you ever watch we talked about this before, remember?
No, whatever it is, I didn't watch it.
Well, it was the mini-series where who was the gal that when we talked about that they brought that up in the podcast, Zellweger, wasn't it Renee Zellweger?
Oh, yeah, that you said that Renee Zellweger heard about the case and she pitched herself, is that it?
Right. That was the thing they talked about. Keith Morton talked about that she saw this thing on Dateline and when she heard somebody was going to be doing this essentially documentary mini doc, whatever you want to call it, docu-series on the Betsy Faria murder, that she said, I want to play Pamela Hupp. I think I can do that.
And they made her up to look real ugly and homely and crazy, right?
Well, that's John. I won't say that.
Well, I don't mean ugly, but I mean Renee Zellweger is an attractive woman, and they made her look more haggard, right? It's fair to say.
Right. Isn't she the one that married Kenny? What's his name? The country dude. Kenny Chesney, when it lasted for like 2 days or something like that.
I don't know. I'm not very good at celebrity pop culture.
And there's people that say that the reason that marriage was done to begin with, because the reason for this, John?
Oh no, why is that?
Well, they claim it was a there's a term for this. They use it in the gay community, that it was like a sham marriage because of the fact that he was proving that he really wasn't gay. Did people think Kenny Chesney was gay? Yes, supposedly people.
I don't know a single song that he sings, so I don't know anything about him. If I see a guy in a cowboy hat and he's not a member of the Village People, I'm probably going to assume that he's heterosexual.
Okay, so going back to this thing, see, this is where when you see these kind of things and you see, justice must be done, and I know people that live in Lincoln County. And this is sort of a sideways joke that Lincoln County is not necessarily the best county to have a trial in, because, and it's almost like it's to a certain extent, it's gotten sort of the reputation in a different way of Madison County, Illinois. You and I have talked about the fact that Madison
the judicial hellhole.
Right, the judicial hellhole. And the reason there are attorneys over there who live in multi-million-dollar homes is because they practice at the Madison County Courthouse and because they have juries that are very, very, very sympathetic. I'm gonna become the defense attorney for John Combes. Yes, members of the jury, John Combes, when he was trying to switch his computer over from Skype to Teams, got a hangnail. That is why I say you should find a verdict against Microsoft for $100 million for John Combes getting a hangnail for getting his computer switched over from Skype to Teams. And the jury go, he's right. That John Combes, we think he deserves $500 million. That's why they all practice over in Madison County.
I know, and they got I didn't testify, or else they would have found against me, right, Brad?
Right. They'd
be like, is that the guy that's mean to the old guy on the radio? He gets no money. Pay him no damages.
Right, pay him no damages. So read the article in the Post-Dispatch. It's a pretty interesting article if you can get it there because and like you said, he's now admitted that he lied. Isn't that what it said in the article?
Yeah, which is really disappointing, right?
Oh man. You read these stories and you think that, we talk about, you go back to our founders of our country and, the reason we have all these rules and the Constitution and these state laws and things like that is because this kind of crap happened in England and these other countries primarily England, that the founding fathers came from. Kangaroo courts, hey, this guy's guilty, even though, he may be innocent, but we say he's guilty and he's guilty, that kind of thing. You're not judged by a jury of your peers. It's a kangaroo court. They can throw you in jail and keep you there for 10 years and not press any charges against you. Hey, we're still thinking about what to charge him with, which is interesting because that does happen in the United States, which is, I think, is very sad, but one of those kind of things. So
that's the reason why the only court that I want to go to is a captain kangaroo court. Bob Keeshan puts a robe on and tells you how to do batting practice with the Yankees and other fun things.
John, aren't you too young for that?
No, Captain Kangaroo was pretty popular when I was a kid. I don't think Captain Kangaroo went off the air till like 85, 86.
So what year were you born in?
77.
Okay, so you would have been like a little tyke when he was still on the air.
Yeah, and then it was on syndication forever on, like Channel 9 and Channel 30 for sure.
But you were never exposed to Romper Room, right?
Yeah, that was way before man. Now I get the cultural reference because people use that phrase all the time.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that you often are known as a doobie, but that's for smoking doobies. That's not for doobie good, doobie right, doobie kind.
Didn't I find that song? Didn't I play that one day in the air where there was
You did play that, Brad. Be a doobie.
Right, be a doobie, not a don't be. That was, if you know what we're talking about, that was Miss Lois, who was our local romper room lady, and she would say, now, if you clean up your room and you do what your mom and dad says, you're a doobie. But if you don't clean up your room and don't you say, don't be a don't be, because don't be's wouldn't clean up their room and they wouldn't put their underwear in the hamper and all those kind of things. Right? Be a doobie. And nowadays it's like yeah man, be a doobie.
She was the greatest local celebrity until Guy Phillips did DB's Delight. And see, that was more my era, Brad.
But see, the original DB's Delight was my old compatriot. I worked with both Guy Phillips, but it was young Bobby Day.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you looked him up. You told the story before, Brad. And did he move to Kansas City or where did he go to?
Well, he worked in Kansas City for a long time. They hired him into here, St. Louis. Bobby Day was just an interesting character. Bobby Day, I worked with two guys back in the old KSOQ days. Two amazing disc jockeys, Bobby Day and JoJo Kincaid. Bobby Day never made a mistake. Never made a mistake. I mean, he never, said anything. I mean, he never slurred any words. Everything that came out of his mouth was perfect. Matter of fact, at one point in time, he got into a little bit of tiff. We had this new butthead program director. We had to have air check sessions every day. And air check sessions is you would take the show that you did from the day before, and you'd sit in the program director's office. He'd go through it break by break. Now, you shouldn't have said that. You should have said this. And you would just totally demoralize you. And Bobby Day one time got in a little bit of tiff with the program director, and he says, I don't know why we have to do this every day. Every one of my shows is the same. They're all perfect. And they were. He never made any mistakes. It was an amazing guy. And he was an interesting character, and to the point where you'd love him, John, because he lived this minimalistic life. He probably has, I don't know if he's still alive. His real name was Robert Dietrich.
Well, he eventually became middle-aged Bobby Day.
Well, but it was interesting because people asked him what was the deal with young Bobby Day. He worked at WHB in Kansas City, which was the store station, which was the top 40 station, and it was a union station. And it's still to this day, and the Screen Actors Guild, they're now one union, you can't duplicate names. So in other words, if there was already a John Combest, and if you decided you were going to join after a SAG because you were going to do like big time radio where you had to be in the union, and you found out that there was already a John Combest in after a SAG, you could not be John Combest.
So he changed his name for the union thing, right?
Yes, there was a Bobby Day because his air name was Bobby Day, and when he joined, and that's what he went by, and when he joined the union, they said, you can't be Bobby Day. We already have a Bobby Day. And he says, well, I'll be young Bobby Day. So he was young Bobby Day. So I don't know what happened to him. I was through Kansas City like maybe 8 or 9 years ago when my kids were still living there. My two sons.
Isn't he on KBDZ now?
No. He wouldn't.
Are you sure? I thought he came on right after Katie Cruz.
No, he would never do that kind of a format. He would, and even to the point where this is radio nerd stuff. Okay, there is a video which someone sent me just last week, which was pretty interesting. JoJo Kincaid was the other guy. Bobby Day did middays. JoJo Kincaid did afternoons. Two incredibly talented disc jockeys. Okay. And JoJo Kincaid, there are videos of him not of KSLQ, but a Q station out in San Diego. And there's videos of him doing on air. And at one point in time, one of these videos was sent to Howard Stern. Howard Stern did a whole segment on JoJo Kincaid, did like an hour on him, talking about how the top 40 DJs were incredibly talented. And he said, there's no way I could do that. And because of the fact that Howard Stern always worked at progressive stations, which is like, let me give you my progressive station. KC95, that was Led Zeppelin. It's 757.
And 30. You call that puking, right, Brad?
No, they just had this whispering voice. They talk like that.
Oh, I see. By the way, I looked, there's a bunch of JoJo Kincaid.
Yes.
Clip on YouTube.
He's good. He was good. And the crazy thing about it was he was this little scrawny guy. But when he got on the air, his voice got like that. He was JoJo Kincaid. And you'd think was this great big 6'6" guy, big biceps, the whole bit. And he'd walk, and he was a nice guy, super nice guy. He'd walk out of the studio. Hey, man, how's it going? Everything going okay? Yeah, man. Hey, good day. Yeah, man, great show today. He was one of those kind of guys. But on the air, he was JoJo cooking Kincaid. And it was so good. And Stern did a whole hour on him about how these top 40 DJs, it's a lost art, how he could never done that. And he even talks about the fact that one of his buddies that he went to college with got a job as a top 40 DJ, and he visited him at the radio station. He sat in the studio going like, man, I could never do this. This is hard. How do you do it? I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And once again, because the progressive guys, the Keishi guys, and I'm not making fun of them, but, like the Randy Rayleys of the world, the song fades out. Keishi 95, I'm Randy Rayleigh. Yeah, it's a great day. It's 7:59. Going to be a nice day. High of 65 today. Hey, Led Zeppelin's up next. I'm not making fun of them, but that's what they did. We talked up songs. You hit the post. You were always. I don't want to go there. It sounds like I'm an old guy, but I am 90 years old plus one day, John. And John.
Yeah. And now you can just set the old system to play Dua Lipa once an hour, and you don't have to worry. Or if you're Brad Hildebrand, you can experiment with AI voices, and you don't even need a DJ, right?
And you don't need a DJ. And what's interesting about that is, I think.
What's that, Brad?
I think that I'm fairly smart when it comes to radio, but I brought in a consultant recently. And
were they fond of quoting old MGM movies from the 1930s?
And I said to her, I've done a pretty good job with the station, don't you think? And she looked at me and she said,
what would you do with a brain if you had one?
And I thought to myself, man,
And then she said, for the latest weather in Wentzville, visit wentzville.us.
John, today's going to be a mark on the wall. We did
what is that?
An A block and an AA block and then a B and then a C block. So we did 4 blocks.
Yeah, AA stands for Alcoholics Anonymous. It stands for Audio Anonymous. It's when John messes up his teams. Hey, Brad, good luck tonight. I know you're going to try to go to 2 meetings. You'll only go to 1. But I know you're going to try to go to a West County Chamber thing with a bunch of ethnic chambers of commerce. And tonight, June 5th, is the event from 6 to 8 at the Lodge at the Pear.
Is that the one that Niall Stevens is involved with?
Someday you will tell me on or off the air why you're so fond of saying Niall's name today.
Niall Stevens. Okay.
And I have a link up today to the Mark Cox Morning Show, in which Niall Stevens was a guest yesterday, Brad.
Yeah, and I sent it. I heard that, and I sent him a text, and I said, Niall Stevens, great job.
And you know that he did acknowledge on social media, Brad, that he did, in fact, send you a personalized text. And so I stand corrected. I thought you were on some sort of a mass text list, but it turns out that he actually did text you individually to invite you to come.
John, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I'm not trying to say that I've proven you wrong. But last night at 9:26 last night, I got a text from Niall Stevens, and he gives the whole thing. He says, "Here's the lineup: 6:10 mingle, blah 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 blah," and then he sends me another text. You ready for this, John?
I'm ready.
He says, because you said my name a few times in your show, you get the personalized agenda. Ha ha, see you tomorrow.
Oh, very nice.
Niall Stevens. Now do you get it, John?
And he doesn't know that you've already sent regrets that you won't be there.
Niall Stevens. John, you know what today is? Oh, hold it. I hear Kara Spencer. I just got a text from her. Oh, today's Niall Stevens Day in St. Louis. Did you know that, John?
Ooh, nice. Oh. And then Niall says, no, don't bring that crime out here. Let's make sure maybe like a Wildwood mayor.
No, hold it. I just got a text from Dr. Page. Brad, I just want you to know that today is Niall Stevens Day in St. Louis County. John.
Amazing.
John, we'll talk to you tomorrow.